Trauma bonding. Why you can't let go of the one who hurt you. There's a voice in your head right now. It whispers their name when you're alone. It replays moments you wish you could forget. It tells you that maybe, just maybe, they weren't that bad. That voice isn't love. It's a survival mechanism your brain created to endure what it couldn't escape. You know they hurt you. You remember the nights you cried yourself to sleep. The moments you felt invisible. The times you promised yourself you'd never go back. Yet here you are, thinking about them again. Missing them. Craving them. This isn't weakness. This isn't stupidity. This is your nervous system hijacked by one of the most powerful psychological traps ever documented. This is trauma bonding. And it's destroying you from the inside out. What makes this phenomenon so devastating is that you're aware of it. You've told friends what happened. You've listed all the reasons why you should stay away. You've made promises to yourself in moments of clarity. But when darkness falls, when silence becomes unbearable, when you're alone with your thoughts, that magnetic pull returns. Stronger than logic, deeper than reason, more powerful than your conscious will to survive. Your brain has been chemically rewired to crave the very person who's systematically destroying you. And the worst part? You can't seem to stop it, no matter how hard you try to break free from their gravitational field. Let's examine something that defies all logic. A woman sits in a therapist's office, tears streaming down her face. She escaped 3 months ago from a partner who screamed at her daily, who made her feel worthless, who dismantled her self-worth piece by piece over 5 years. The therapist asks a simple question that lands like a bomb in the quiet room. Do you miss him? The woman nods, her voice barely a whisper. Every single day. The therapist leans forward. Even though he hurt you? The woman's response is what makes trauma bonding so terrifying. Especially because he hurt me. This is the paradox that shatters everything we think we know about human behavior and self-preservation instincts. Logic dictates that humans should run from pain. Evolution designed us to avoid danger at all costs. Our ancestors survived because they learned to fear predators, to recognize threats, to escape situations that could kill them. Yet trauma bonding creates something evolution never anticipated. A connection to danger so powerful, it overrides millions of years of survival programming. When a brain is repeatedly subjected to unpredictable cycles of abuse and affection, cruelty and kindness, terror and relief, it creates a bond stronger than love itself. This bond isn't built on trust or mutual respect or healthy attachment. It's built on something far more primal and far more dangerous. The desperate need to survive an impossible situation. The term emerged from research in the 1970s, when psychologists studied hostages who inexplicably defended their captors. They called it Stockholm Syndrome, named after a bank robbery in Sweden, where hostages bonded with the criminals who threatened their lives. But the real horror doesn't unfold in banks or kidnapping scenarios. It happens in bedrooms and living rooms and kitchen tables. It happens in relationships that look completely normal from the outside, but feel like slow suffocation from within. It happens to intelligent, successful, capable people who would never imagine they could become trapped in this psychological prison. And it's happening right now to someone you know. Or perhaps to you. The therapist has heard this confession dozens of times before. She's witnessed successful executives who negotiate million-dollar deals but can't leave partners who belittle them. She's counseled parents who fiercely protect their children but accept mistreatment from spouses without question. She's watched intelligent, self-aware individuals lose all sense of self-preservation when it comes to one specific relationship. The woman continues, her words tumbling out. I know intellectually that what he did was wrong. I can list every terrible thing he said, every moment he made me feel small. But when I'm alone at night, all I can think about is how he used to hold me in the beginning. How he looked at me like I was the only person in the world. The person you thought he was. The therapist repeats slowly, emphasizing each word. Not the person he actually was. The woman pauses, struggling with this distinction. It feels important, like a key turning in a lock, but she can't quite grasp it yet. Because in her mind, both versions exist simultaneously and impossibly. The man who made her feel more loved than she'd ever felt. And the man who destroyed her more completely than anyone ever had. And somehow, inexplicably, they're the same person. Her brain cannot reconcile this contradiction, so it bends reality instead. It creates narratives. It manufactures excuses. It rewrites history to make the unbearable bearable and the inexplicable logical. Your brain operates as a sophisticated chemical factory, producing compounds that regulate everything from mood to motivation to memory. And when someone hurts you, then loves you, then hurts you again in an unpredictable pattern, that factory shifts into a mode it was never designed to sustain. Let's dissect what happens at the molecular level during these cycles. When your partner shows kindness after cruelty, when they apologize after rage, when they hold you gently after breaking you, your brain floods with dopamine and oxytocin. These are the primary bonding chemicals, the same neurochemicals that create the bond between mothers and newborns, the same compounds that make you fall in love. But there's a sinister twist that transforms normal bonding into addiction. Dopamine is your brain's reward signal. It's released when you eat something delicious, when you win a competition, when you accomplish a goal, when you experience pleasure. It's designed to reinforce behaviors that promote survival and reproduction. But dopamine has a dark side that's been exploited by everything from slot machines to social media to addictive drugs. The more unpredictable the reward, the more powerful the dopamine response becomes. In a healthy relationship, dopamine releases are consistent and predictable. Your partner is reliably kind. You feel secure. The neurochemical flow is steady, creating a stable baseline of contentment and well-being. But in a traumatic bond, dopamine releases become random, intense, and desperately anticipated. Imagine standing in front of a slot machine. You pull the lever. Sometimes you win big. Sometimes you lose everything. Sometimes you break even. But you can't stop pulling, because the unpredictability itself becomes intoxicating. Your brain enters a state of constant anticipation, always scanning for the next possible reward. This is intermittent reinforcement. And behavioral scientists have known for decades that it's the most powerful form of conditioning that exists. It's more effective than consistent rewards. It's more controlling than consistent punishment. Because the unpredictability keeps your brain locked in a perpetual state of hope and fear, always believing that the next pull of the lever might finally deliver the jackpot you're desperately craving. This is exactly what unfolds in an abusive relationship. The moments of kindness become the jackpot. And because you never know when they're coming, because you can't predict what will trigger them or how long they'll last, your brain stays hooked in a desperate cycle. You become hypervigilant, constantly monitoring their mood, adjusting your behavior in real time, trying to crack the code that will make them stay kind. You analyze every interaction, searching for patterns. convinced that if you could just figure out the formula, you could control the outcome. But there is no formula. The randomness is the point. The unpredictability is what keeps you trapped and coming back for more, even when every logical part of your brain is screaming at you to run. But dopamine isn't working alone in this chemical conspiracy. Cortisol, your primary stress hormone, plays an equally crucial role in cementing the traumatic bond. In a healthy relationship, cortisol levels remain low most of the time. You feel safe. Your nervous system can rest and recover. Your body isn't constantly preparing for threats. But in a traumatic bond, cortisol levels spike repeatedly and unpredictably. Your body exists in a perpetual state of fight-or-flight activation. And here's where the mechanism becomes truly disturbing. Your brain begins to associate this person with survival itself, not just with love or companionship or partnership, but with your continued existence on this planet. Think about how your brain functions when you're in genuine danger. Your focus narrows dramatically. Non-essential systems shut down. All your attention, all your resources, all your energy concentrates on one single imperative: staying alive. And if the same person who creates the danger also provides the only available relief from that danger, your brain makes a catastrophic miscalculation. It concludes that this person is essential to your survival. They become your drug and your dealer, your captor and your savior, your threat and your protection, all at once. This confusion creates a psychological dependency so profound that leaving them feels identical to dying. Not metaphorically. Your nervous system literally interprets separation as a mortal threat. Research conducted at Harvard Medical School reveals something chilling. Victims of prolonged emotional abuse display brain patterns virtually identical to soldiers diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. The amygdala, which serves as your brain's fear and threat detection center, becomes hyperactive and hypersensitive. It sees danger everywhere. It reacts to the smallest triggers. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, your logic and reasoning center, shows decreased activity. This is the part of your brain responsible for rational decision-making, for weighing consequences, for planning your future. And it's essentially offline. You stop thinking clearly. You start reacting purely emotionally. And that's when the bond becomes virtually unbreakable, without intervention and support. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, arguably the world's leading expert on trauma and its effects on the brain, describes this state as living in perpetual survival mode. Your nervous system gets stuck in a threat response that never fully deactivates. Even during calm moments, even when nothing bad is actively happening, you're waiting for the next explosion. Your muscles stay tense. Your sleep becomes disrupted. Your digestion suffers. You're exhausted constantly, but you can't pinpoint exactly why. Because the exhaustion isn't physical in nature. It's neurological. Your brain is running an ultra-marathon every single day, just trying to keep you safe in an environment that has become fundamentally unsafe. And it's burning through resources at an unsustainable rate. Then there's oxytocin, often romantically called the love hormone or the bonding chemical. Oxytocin is released during physical touch, during sex, during moments of emotional intimacy and vulnerability. It's what creates the profound bond between romantic partners, between parents and children, between close friends. It's designed to cement social connections that enhance survival. But here's what makes trauma bonding so insidious. Oxytocin floods your system even during and after abusive encounters. When they finally touch you again after days of coldness, when they're suddenly tender after being cruel, when they hold you while you cry over wounds they inflicted, your brain releases massive amounts of oxytocin. This chemical bonds you to them even more deeply than before. This creates a devastating association in your neural pathways. Your brain starts to connect this person, not just with the relief you feel when the abuse stops, but with safety and comfort themselves. After a terrible fight, when they finally apologize and hold you, the cortisol that's been flooding your system finally drops. The relief is so profound, so overwhelming, that your brain marks this moment as significant. It remembers who provided this relief, and it bonds to them even more tightly. This is why makeup encounters feel so intense, why reconciliation after a blow-up can feel more intimate than normal healthy affection. Your nervous system has been in crisis mode, drowning in stress chemicals. And when the threat finally passes, the relief is euphoric. Your body is literally rewarding you chemically for staying with the person who's destroying you. It's creating powerful, positive associations with someone who poses a genuine threat to your well-being. And every cycle strengthens these neural pathways, making them faster, more automatic, more difficult to override with conscious thought. After enough cycles, the bond operates completely below the level of conscious awareness. You can know intellectually that you should leave. You can understand logically that this relationship is harmful. But your nervous system has its own agenda, its own logic, its own priorities. And it has decided, based on these chemical patterns, that this person is essential to your survival. Breaking free requires fighting against your own biology. Every traumatic bond follows a predictable pattern. It's not random chaos. It's not just bad luck or poor compatibility. It's a specific, identifiable cycle that's been documented extensively in psychological literature. This cycle operates like a machine, engineered sometimes consciously and sometimes unconsciously, by the same psychological mechanisms that cults use to control members. Understanding this cycle is the first step toward recognizing that you're trapped in it. The cycle has 4 distinct phases, and each phase serves a specific purpose in creating and maintaining the bond. Once you see the pattern clearly, you can't unsee it. And that recognition, painful as it is, becomes the foundation for eventual freedom. The cycle begins with idealization. In the beginning, they're perfect. Not just good or nice or compatible. Perfect. They see you in a way no one else ever has. They make you feel special, chosen, understood at a level that feels almost supernatural. This phase is intoxicating and overwhelming. Your brain lights up like a city at night. Every conversation feels significant. Every touch feels electric. You think you found your soulmate, your missing piece, the person you've been searching for your entire life. They listen to you with an intensity that's flattering and slightly overwhelming. They remember tiny details about your past. They text constantly. They want to spend every possible moment with you. They tell you you're different from everyone else they've dated. They create a sense of destiny and fate, suggesting that you were meant to find each other, that this connection is rare and precious and worth protecting at all costs. This isn't accidental. Whether they're consciously aware of it or not, they're love-bombing you. They're flooding you with affection and attention at a pace that feels breathless, but exhilarating. Your dopamine system goes into overdrive. You become addicted, not just to them, but to the feeling of being seen and valued and desired at this intensity. Friends might warn you it's moving too fast, that the intensity feels unsustainable. But you dismiss their concerns, because this feels right in a way nothing else ever has. Then, slowly and subtly, the devaluation phase begins. Things shift in ways so gradual you barely notice at first. A comment here that stings slightly. A criticism there that seems helpful on the surface but leaves you feeling diminished. You start walking on eggshells without quite knowing why. But it's subtle enough that you blame yourself rather than questioning their behavior. Maybe you're being too sensitive. Maybe you need to try harder. Maybe you misunderstood. The person who once worshipped you now seems vaguely disappointed. And that gap between who you were to them in the beginning and who you appear to be now creates a desperate anxiety in your chest. You feel yourself slipping, losing their approval, falling from grace. The first criticism catches you completely off guard. Maybe they comment on your appearance in a way that doesn't feel like a compliment. Maybe they compare you unfavorably to an ex. Maybe they get irritated at something you do, something they used to find endearing. You laugh it off. Everyone has bad days. Everyone gets stressed. But then it happens again. And again. The criticisms become more frequent, more pointed, more difficult to dismiss. They might frame them as jokes, but the jokes don't feel funny. They might say they're trying to help you improve, but you feel yourself shrinking every time. You notice they're not as affectionate anymore. They don't text as much. They seem distracted and distant when you're together. You ask if everything is okay, and they turn the question back on you. They say you're being paranoid, needy, insecure, dramatic. So you swallow your concerns and try harder to become the person they fell in love with in the beginning. You start performing. You change your appearance. You suppress your opinions. You laugh at things that aren't funny. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. You become hypervigilant about their moods, constantly adjusting your behavior in real time to avoid triggering their displeasure. You're walking on eggshells, but you tell yourself this is just a rough patch. All relationships go through difficult periods. This is normal. This is fine. Everything will be okay if you just try harder. And occasionally, miraculously, you succeed. They're kind again. The warmth returns. They touch you gently. They apologize for being distant. They tell you they've been stressed, that it's not about you, that they love you. And your brain explodes with relief so intense it feels like a drug. This is the reinforcement phase, and it's the most powerful part of the cycle. In this moment, all the pain evaporates. All the doubt disappears. You feel euphoric and vindicated. You knew it. You knew they still loved you. You knew if you just tried hard enough, if you were patient enough, if you were perfect enough, you could bring back the person they were in the beginning. The relief is so overwhelming that you feel physically high. Your nervous system, which has been in crisis mode for days or weeks, finally gets permission to rest. The cortisol drops. The dopamine floods in. And your brain attributes this profound relief to them. They're your savior. They brought you back from the edge. They made the pain stop. Never mind that they caused the pain in the first place. Your brain doesn't make that connection. It only registers that they're the source of relief. So it bonds to them even more tightly. This is intermittent reinforcement at its most devastating. You've just been rewarded for enduring abuse. Your brain has just learned that if you stay, if you try hard enough, if you perform well enough, you'll eventually get the love you're craving. But then the cycle repeats. The anger returns, the coldness settles back in, the cruelty resurfaces, and you're back in the devaluation phase, desperately trying to earn your way back to reinforcement. Over and over, the cycle spins faster. The idealization phase never fully returns, but you keep chasing it. The devaluation becomes more intense, the insults cut deeper, the silent treatments last longer. But when reinforcement comes, even if it's just a crumb of kindness compared to the feast you used to receive, your brain treats it like everything you've ever needed. Because you're starving. And even crumbs taste like a banquet when you're starving. This cycle can continue for years, each repetition strengthening the bond until it feels unbreakable. Here's what makes traumatic bonding so psychologically sinister. You believe you're choosing to stay. You tell yourself it's love. You rationalize their behavior. You remember the good times and convince yourself they outweigh the bad. You create elaborate justifications for why this relationship makes sense. But this isn't choice in any meaningful sense. This is your nervous system in survival mode, making decisions based on perceived threats and desperate needs, not on logic or self-preservation. Your conscious mind thinks it's in control, but it's not. Your primitive brain has taken over, and it has priorities that have nothing to do with your happiness or well-being. Its only goal is survival, and it has miscalculated catastrophically about what survival requires. Research from the American Psychological Association documents something called betrayal trauma. When someone you depend on emotionally, financially, or psychologically hurts you, your brain faces an impossible dilemma. It can acknowledge the danger, which means losing the relationship and everything that comes with it. Or it can minimize the danger, which allows you to preserve the bond. Most brains choose preservation, especially when leaving feels impossible or more dangerous than staying, because the alternative is too terrifying to contemplate. Being alone, starting over, admitting you wasted years on someone who never truly valued you, facing the judgment of others who warned you. So your brain rewrites the story to make staying feel like the right choice. You start manufacturing excuses for their behavior. To your friends, to your family, to yourself. They had a difficult childhood. They're under tremendous pressure at work. They don't mean it when they say those things. Everyone fights sometimes. It's not abuse if there's no physical violence. These rationalizations aren't conscious lies. They're cognitive distortions your brain creates to resolve the unbearable dissonance between what you know intellectually and what your nervous system believes. Your brain cannot hold both truths simultaneously, so it bends one of them. And because changing your circumstances feels impossible, it changes your perception of those circumstances instead. It redefines abuse as passion. It reframes cruelty as honesty. It transforms control into care. This psychological phenomenon is called cognitive dissonance, and it's exhausting to maintain. You're holding two contradictory beliefs simultaneously. This person hurts me, and I need this person. Your mind contorts itself trying to make both statements true. And in that mental gymnastics, in that constant effort to reconcile the irreconcilable, you stay trapped. The dissonance creates a kind of mental fog that makes clear thinking almost impossible. You can't see the situation objectively, because objectivity would shatter the fragile narrative you've constructed. So you avoid objectivity. You avoid clear-eyed assessment. You avoid anything that might force you to acknowledge the reality you're living in. because that reality is too painful to face. Psychologist Leon Festinger first described cognitive dissonance in the 1950s. He discovered that when people hold contradictory beliefs, they experience psychological discomfort so intense that they'll go to extraordinary lengths to resolve it. And often, they resolve it not by changing their behavior or leaving their circumstances, but by changing their beliefs about those circumstances. So you change what you believe about your relationship. You minimize the abuse. You redefine what counts as mistreatment. You tell yourself that love is supposed to be difficult, that real passion involves conflict, that if it were easy, it wouldn't be meaningful. You lower your standards so gradually that you don't notice it happening until behavior that would have horrified you at the beginning has become your normal. Your friends and family notice the changes in you. You're quieter than you used to be, more withdrawn. You don't laugh as freely. You cancel plans frequently, often at the last minute. You've stopped talking about your relationship in any meaningful way, deflecting questions with vague reassurances that everything is fine. When they express concern, you feel defensive. They don't understand. They don't see the good parts. They don't know your partner the way you do. So you pull away from them, which isolates you further, which makes you more dependent on your partner, which gives them more control, which makes leaving even harder. The isolation compounds every other element of the trap. Many abusive partners deliberately engineer this isolation. They create conflict with your friends and family. They monopolize your time. They make you feel guilty for wanting relationships outside the partnership. But even when they don't do this explicitly, shame accomplishes the same goal. You're embarrassed to admit what's happening. You know your loved ones would tell you to leave. You know they'd be disappointed that you've stayed this long. So you stop confiding. You stop reaching out. You retreat further into the relationship, which becomes your entire world. And when your world shrinks to just one person, that person becomes everything. Your only source of companionship. Your only source of affection. Your only source of validation. Losing them would mean losing everything. There's another layer that makes trauma bonding particularly difficult to escape. You're not addicted to the person they are now. You're addicted to the person they were in the beginning. That version of them exists in your memory like a ghost, perfect and untouchable. And you believe with desperate conviction that if you just try hard enough, if you're patient enough, if you love them enough, you can resurrect that ghost. You can bring back the person who made you feel more seen and valued than anyone ever had. That person haunts you. That person is what you're staying for. That person is what makes all the current pain feel bearable. Because you're not enduring this for who they are now. You're enduring it for who they might become again. But here's the truth that's going to hurt. That person never existed. The idealization phase was a trap, whether they said it consciously or not. It was designed to hook you, to create a baseline of perfection that you'd spend the rest of the relationship desperately chasing. This is a common tactic in emotional manipulation. Create an impossible standard. Make someone believe they've found paradise. Then gradually withdraw it, while making them believe they're responsible for the loss. The victim spends all their energy trying to get back to something that was never real in the first place. They're chasing a mirage. And mirages always stay just out of reach, no matter how fast or how far you run toward them. You remember the first time they said they loved you. The look in their eyes. The sincerity in their voice. You remember feeling seen in a way you'd never experienced before. You remember thinking that this was what you'd been searching for your entire life. And you cannot reconcile that memory with the person who screams at you now, who demeans you, who makes you feel worthless. So your brain creates a narrative to bridge the gap. There's still that person underneath. They're just hurt, traumatized, stressed, broken. If you could just love them enough, be patient enough, be perfect enough, that original person would emerge again. But they won't. Because that person was a performance, not a personality. It was a mask, not a face. Psychologists call this the Phantom X phenomenon. You're not mourning the person who's hurting you. You're mourning the person you thought they were, the person they presented themselves as, the person they performed being during the idealization phase. And that person is a fiction, a carefully constructed illusion that served one purpose: securing your attachment. Once your attachment was secure, once they were confident you wouldn't leave easily, the mask came off. The real person emerged. Or perhaps more accurately, a different mask appeared. Because you still don't know who they really are. You only know the versions they've shown you, and none of those versions may be authentic. You fell in love with a performance, and you're suffering through reality. This recognition is particularly devastating because it makes you complicit in your own captivity. You're not staying for reality. You're staying for memory. You're staying for fantasy. You're staying for a version of them that hasn't existed in months or years, if it ever existed at all. And every time they show you a glimpse of that original version, every rare moment of tenderness or charm or attention, it reinforces your belief that they're still in there somewhere. That the person you fell in love with is buried under pain and stress and trauma, waiting to be rescued by your love. But you can't rescue someone from themselves. And you can't love someone into being who you need them to be. People who have never experienced a traumatic bond have no shortage of advice. Just leave. Why do you stay? Don't you have any self-respect? You're choosing this. These statements aren't just unhelpful, they're cruel and damaging. Because they assume leaving is a logical decision made by a brain that's functioning normally. It's not. Leaving someone you're traumatically bonded to feels like dying. Not metaphorically or dramatically. Your nervous system perceives separation as a genuine threat to your survival. Your body floods with panic signals. Your mind races with catastrophic predictions. What if no one else ever loves you? What if you're making the biggest mistake of your life? What if you can't survive alone? What if they were right about you all along? The anxiety when you try to leave is physical and overwhelming. Your chest constricts. Your heart races uncontrollably. You feel nauseous. You can't sleep. You can't eat. Your hands shake. You feel like you're having a heart attack or losing your mind. This isn't drama. This isn't attention-seeking behavior. This is your nervous system in full panic mode because, as far as your primitive brain is concerned, you're abandoning your only source of safety in a dangerous world. It doesn't matter that logically you understand this person is the danger. Your primitive brain doesn't traffic in logic. It traffics in survival. And it is decided that this person is essential to your continued existence. Fighting against that belief requires overcoming your own biology. Research from Stanford University reveals something striking. The brain regions activated during withdrawal from an abusive relationship are nearly identical to the regions activated during withdrawal from addictive drugs. The cravings are neurologically real. The physical pain is biochemically real. Your body is going through detoxification from chemicals it has become dependent on. When you separate from them, your dopamine levels plummet. You experience what addicts call dope sickness. Everything feels gray and meaningless. Nothing brings pleasure. You feel hollow and empty. And your brain knows exactly how to fix this. Go back to the source. Contact them. See them. Let them back in. Get that chemical hit your system is desperately craving. The urge is almost impossible to resist without support. And here's the cruelest element of this trap. The abuser knows this. They sense when you're pulling away. They feel the shift in your energy, and that's precisely when they reel you back in. They apologize. They cry. They promise change. They swear things will be different this time. They give you just enough hope to keep you hooked, just enough kindness to reset the cycle. Because they're addicted too, though to something different. They're not addicted to you as a person. They're addicted to control, to power, to the knowledge that they can break you and you'll still come back, that they can hurt you and you'll still stay. That knowledge feeds something in them that needs constant reinforcement. When you leave and stay gone, you disrupt their supply. You take away their source of control. Many abusers will escalate dramatically when they lose control. They'll alternate between extreme remorse and extreme anger. They'll make grand gestures and terrible threats. They'll promise everything you've ever wanted and predict your complete destruction without them. They'll send messages through friends. They'll show up at your work or home. This escalation can last for weeks or months. It's called an extinction burst in behavioral psychology. When a behavior that's been consistently rewarded suddenly stops being rewarded, it temporarily intensifies before it finally stops. Understanding this pattern can help you survive it without going back. But surviving it requires strength most people don't realize they possess until they're forced to find it. But something has shifted in you by reading these words. You're recognizing patterns. You're seeing the machinery behind what you thought was love. You're understanding the psychological and neurological mechanisms that have kept you trapped. And that recognition, painful and disorienting as it is, represents the first critical step toward freedom. Recognition means you can't unsee what you now see. You can't unknow what you now know. The illusion has cracks in it. Light is getting through. And while that light is uncomfortable and even painful at first, it's also what will guide you out of the darkness you've been living in. Knowledge may not immediately change your circumstances, but it changes your relationship to those circumstances. Recognition is acutely painful. It requires admitting you've been manipulated, that the person you loved wasn't who you thought they were, that you've participated, however unwillingly, in your own destruction, that you've wasted time, energy, love on something that was never what it appeared to be. These realizations hurt more than almost anything else in this process, because they require you to see yourself clearly, to acknowledge your vulnerability, to accept that you were deceived despite your intelligence and strengths. But this pain is necessary. It's the pain of waking up from a dream. And while waking can be harsh and disorienting, being awake is the only state from which you can actually change your situation and reclaim your life. Think carefully about your relationship right now. Does it follow the cycle that's been described? Idealization in the beginning, then gradual devaluation, then occasional reinforcement that keeps you hooked, then the cycle repeats. Do you feel like you're constantly trying to earn back affection that used to be freely given? Do you make excuses for behavior you'd never accept from anyone else? Do you feel disproportionate relief when they're kind, even though they were cruel just hours before? Do you walk on eggshells? Do you monitor their moods constantly? Have you changed fundamental parts of yourself trying to please them? Do you feel smaller than you used to? Have friends or family expressed concern? Have you isolated yourself from support systems? If you're nodding while reading these questions, if recognition is dawning cold and uncomfortable in your chest, you're in a traumatic bond. And the person you miss isn't the person who's hurting you. It's the chemical high your brain associates with them. It's the illusion of safety in a fundamentally unsafe situation. It's the addiction your nervous system created to cope with chronic threat. It's the fantasy version they presented during idealization. It's the hope that things will return to how they were in the beginning. But things won't return. That beginning was a trap designed to secure your attachment. And now you're attached to something that's destroying you slowly from the inside out. Seeing this clearly doesn't immediately fix it, but it's the necessary foundation for everything that comes next. Here's what happens when you finally leave for good. For the first several weeks, possibly even months, it feels absolutely unbearable. Your brain screams for the dopamine hit it's been getting from those rare moments of kindness and connection. Your body goes through withdrawal that feels like physical illness. You think about them constantly, obsessively, intrusively. You romanticize the good times while your brain conveniently minimizes the bad. You convince yourself it wasn't really that bad, that maybe you overreacted, that maybe you should give them another chance, that maybe they really will change this time. These thoughts aren't signs that you should go back. They're symptoms of withdrawal. They're your addicted brain trying desperately to get you to return to the source of the chemicals it craves. The first 72 hours are typically the hardest. Your anxiety peaks. You feel physical symptoms, racing heart, difficulty breathing, nausea, insomnia, loss of appetite. The urge to contact them becomes almost unbearable. Your hands reach for your phone automatically. You type messages and delete them. You check their social media compulsively, torturing yourself with evidence of their life continuing without you. You analyze every post for hidden meanings. You wonder if they miss you too. You hope they're suffering. You hope they're fine. You don't know what you hope. Everything feels contradictory and overwhelming. This is normal. This is your brain in acute withdrawal. Every instinct screams at you to go back. But going back means restarting the entire process from the beginning. The first week, you'll cry more than you knew was possible. You'll feel waves of grief so intense they physically hurt your chest. You'll oscillate wildly between anger and longing, between clarity and confusion, between strength and complete collapse. One minute you'll remember clearly why you left, all the terrible things they did. The next minute you'll only remember their smile, their laugh, the way they used to hold you. Your emotions will swing violently from one extreme to another, sometimes shifting multiple times within a single hour. This is normal. This is your brain trying to rewire itself after months or years of abnormal patterns. Give yourself permission to feel everything without judging yourself for it. The intensity will decrease with time. This is your brain, beginning a massive rewiring project. Right now, your neural pathways are programmed to seek this person. Every thought pattern, every emotional response, every behavioral habit has been shaped around them. Those connections are like superhighways in your brain, fast and automatic and deeply ingrained. When you go no contact, you're essentially closing those highways. Your brain has to build entirely new roads. And at first, those new roads are slow and difficult to navigate and uncomfortable to travel. Your brain naturally wants to take the familiar highway. That's why the thoughts of them are so intrusive and persistent. You're not weak. You're not failing. You're literally fighting against your own neurology. And that requires more strength than most people ever have to demonstrate. Neuroscientists call this process neural pruning. Your brain has spent substantial time building strong connections between your emotional centers and thoughts of this person. Those connections facilitated quick, automatic responses. Now, you're starving those connections of reinforcement. And when neural pathways aren't used, they gradually weaken. But this takes time. Studies suggest that after approximately 6 months of complete no contact, those neural pathways begin to atrophy significantly. The cravings lessen. The intrusive thoughts decrease in frequency and intensity. The memories lose some of their emotional charge. Your prefrontal cortex, the logic and reasoning center that's been suppressed by chronic stress, starts to come back online. You begin thinking clearly again, making decisions based on logic rather than fear or addiction or desperation. During the first month, your only goal should be survival. Not healing completely, not thriving, not even necessarily understanding everything that happened. Just surviving. Get through each day. If necessary, get through each hour. Build or rebuild a support system immediately. Tell people what you're going through. Shame thrives in silence and isolation. The more you talk about it, the less power it has over you. Join a support group, online or in person. Connect with other survivors who understand what you're experiencing in a way others simply cannot. Their presence and stories will remind you that you're not alone, that what you're feeling is normal for this situation, that recovery is possible. Cut off all contact completely and immediately. This is absolutely essential for healing. Block their number, their email, all their social media accounts. Tell mutual friends not to give you updates about them. Avoid places you might run into them if possible. Every time you see them, hear from them, or hear about them, you're reactivating those neural pathways you're trying to weaken. You're giving your addicted brain a hit of the drug it's trying to quit. No contact isn't cruel, or excessive, or immature. No contact is the only way to truly detox your nervous system from the trauma bond. Any contact, even angry contact, restarts the withdrawal process from the beginning. Your brain doesn't distinguish between positive and negative attention. It only registers connection, which is what it's craving. This will feel extreme and painful. You might think you can handle being friends eventually, that you can be mature adults about this complicated situation. No, not now. Maybe not ever. But definitely not now. Right now, any contact is a relapse. Any interaction feeds the addiction. You need complete separation to allow your nervous system to reset, to allow your brain to build new pathways, to allow yourself to remember who you are without them. This isn't about punishing them. This is about protecting yourself. Your brain is sick. Contact with them is poison to your recovering brain. Treat it accordingly. Treat their attempts to contact you as a threat to your healing, because that's exactly what they are. Expect them to violate your boundaries aggressively. When you implement no contact, when you take away their access and control, many abusers escalate dramatically. They'll text repeatedly, call from different numbers, send emails, show up at your workplace or home, contact you through friends or family. They'll alternate tactics between apologetic and angry, between promising change and predicting your failure. They'll love bomb you with everything you've been desperately wanting: attention, affection, promises of commitment. Then, when that doesn't work, they'll try anger, threats, guilt. This is called an extinction burst in behavioral psychology. When a behavior that's been consistently rewarded suddenly stops being rewarded, it temporarily intensifies before it eventually stops. Understanding this pattern helps you survive it without breaking. Don't respond. Not to apologize, not to argue, not to defend yourself, not even to tell them to stop. Any response, even a negative one, teaches their brain that if they just keep trying, keep pushing, keep escalating, you'll eventually engage. Your silence is the only thing that will eventually make them stop. Even then, it might take weeks or months of persistent boundary violation before they finally give up. Block every new number. Delete every email unread. Don't respond to messages sent through others. Your complete silence is your most powerful tool. It's also incredibly difficult to maintain when every part of you wants to respond, to engage, to explain, to defend. But responding breaks the no contact. And breaking no contact restarts your healing timeline. During months 2 and 3, you'll start experiencing moments of genuine clarity. Days where you don't think about them constantly. Days where you feel recognizably like yourself again. These will alternate with difficult days where grief ambushes you seemingly out of nowhere. Days where you're convinced you'll never feel normal again. This is not linear. Healing from trauma never is. You'll take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Some days 3 steps back. This doesn't mean you're failing. This is exactly what healing looks like. The trajectory isn't a straight line upward. It's a gradually ascending spiral with lots of ups and downs. But if you look at the overall pattern, you're moving upward. You're making progress even when it doesn't feel like it. Keep going through the difficult days. The bad days will become less frequent gradually. The good days will become more frequent. The intensity of the bad days will decrease over time. Your nervous system is slowly recalibrating itself to baseline after months or years of chronic threat activation. Your cortisol levels are dropping back to normal ranges. Your brain is learning that you're actually safe without them, despite what it believed. That you can survive independently. That the catastrophic futures your anxiety predicted aren't manifesting. You're proving to your nervous system, day by day, that separation didn't kill you. And gradually, your nervous system starts to believe the new story instead of the old one. Around month 4 or 5, something interesting typically happens. You start to feel genuine anger. Real, deep, appropriate anger at what they did to you. At what you tolerated. At how much of yourself you sacrificed and suppressed. This anger is healthy and necessary. It's a sign that your self-preservation instinct is coming back online after being suppressed for so long. It's evidence that you're starting to value yourself again, to believe you deserved better. Before this, you couldn't access real anger because you were still bonded, still making excuses, still protecting them in your mind. But now the bond is weakening enough that you can see clearly. And what you see makes you furious. Don't suppress this anger or judge yourself for it. Let it fuel your continued recovery. Let it remind you why you left and why you can never go back. Write letters you'll never send, saying everything you wish you could say. Journal extensively about the worst moments without minimizing or excusing them. Let yourself fully acknowledge the abuse without the cognitive distortions that protected you while you were trapped. This is essential for breaking the trauma bond completely. You have to stop protecting them in your mind. You have to stop making excuses. You have to see clearly what actually happened, not the sanitized version your brain created to make staying bearable. The anger helps you see clearly. Honor it. Use it. Let it protect you. And then one day, probably without warning, you'll wake up and realize you didn't think about them. Not once. That's when you know the bond is truly breaking. That's when you start to reclaim yourself fully and permanently. It might happen 6 months in. It might take a full year. The timeline varies based on how long you were together, how severe the abuse was, how much support you have, how completely you've maintained no contact. But it will happen if you stay committed to your healing. You'll wake up and they won't be your first thought. You'll go about your entire day and suddenly realize at evening that you haven't thought about them once. And in that moment, you'll feel something you haven't felt in longer than you can remember. Genuine freedom. There's something most people don't discuss about recovering from a traumatic bond. The unexpected gift, hidden inside the trauma. When you break a traumatic bond completely, you don't just lose a person who is destroying you. You gain back yourself, the version of yourself that existed before them. The version that got systematically buried under their criticisms, their expectations, their control, their redefinition of who you should be. And reclaiming that person, remembering who you were before you learned to shrink yourself, is profound. It's like meeting an old friend you'd forgotten existed, and realizing that friend is you, the you that got lost, the you that's been waiting patiently for you to come back and claim them again. You start remembering what you genuinely liked before you learned to pretend to like what they liked, what you wanted before you learned to want what they wanted, what made you laugh before you learned to monitor every reaction. You start rebuilding an identity that's authentically yours, not a performance designed to keep someone else happy, not a carefully curated version intended to avoid triggering their anger, not a diminished version that fits into the small space they allotted you, but the full, unedited, authentic version of yourself. This process of rediscovery is painful and beautiful simultaneously, because you're finding parts of yourself you'd forgotten existed, and you're grieving the time you lost while those parts were hidden. The first time you make a decision without considering their opinion is strangely profound. You choose a restaurant because you want to eat there, not because they'd approve of it. You buy clothes because you like them, not because they'd find you attractive in them. You spend time with friends without anxiety tightening your chest. You speak your mind without calculating potential consequences. You express an opinion without preparing your defense. These small acts of autonomy feel revolutionary after months or years of suppression. They feel like tiny rebellions, and each one strengthens your sense of self, rebuilds your confidence, reminds you that you exist independently, that you have preferences and thoughts and desires that are valid simply because they're yours. This doesn't mean the trauma disappears without a trace. Traumatic bonding leaves scars that persist even after healing. You'll be more cautious in future relationships. You'll recognize red flags faster. You'll trust your instincts more. You'll have moments where you doubt yourself, where old patterns try to resurface, where you catch yourself falling into familiar roles. But you'll also be stronger in ways you never would have developed otherwise. Because surviving a traumatic bond requires a level of resilience most people never have to access. You'll have survived something that tried to destroy you. You'll have fought your way out of a psychological trap that many people never escape. That, survival, creates strength you didn't know you possessed. And that strength becomes part of who you are permanently. So why do you miss them even now? Because your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Protect you from pain by seeking familiar patterns. Even when those patterns are demonstrably destructive. Because the bond you formed wasn't built on love or compatibility or healthy attachment. It was built on survival mechanisms. And survival bonds are the strongest bonds our nervous system can create. They're stronger than romantic love, stronger than friendship, stronger than family bonds. Because they're formed in the most primitive parts of your brain that prioritize staying alive above everything else. Evolution designed these bonds to help our ancestors survive capture and captivity. But in modern relationships, they become cages. But here's what you need to understand at the deepest level. Missing them doesn't mean you should go back. Missing them doesn't mean they were good for you. Missing them doesn't mean your decision to leave was wrong. Missing them just means your brain is still detoxing from the chemical addiction they created. It means your nervous system is still learning that you're genuinely safe without them. It means the neural pathways haven't completely pruned yet. The missing will fade gradually if you stay committed to no contact. The memories will lose their emotional charge. The rose-colored glasses will fall off, and one day you'll look back and realize that the person you were mourning never actually existed, except as a carefully constructed performance designed to trap you. You're not missing them as they actually were. You're missing the feeling of relief when pain temporarily stopped. You're missing the hope that things could return to how they were during idealization. You're missing the person you were before they systematically broke you down. And you're confusing that nostalgia with missing them. You're missing the fantasy of who they could have been if they'd actually wanted to change. But they didn't change. They won't change. And the person you fell in love with was never real. That's the hardest truth to accept. But accepting it is what finally sets you free to build something real with someone who doesn't require you to destroy yourself to love them. If you recognized yourself in this exploration, you're not alone in this experience. Millions of people are trapped in traumatic bonds right now, genuinely believing it's love, believing they're the problem, believing they can't leave or shouldn't leave, believing that this is what relationships require. But recognition is the first critical step toward freedom. Seeing the pattern clearly is what makes escape possible. Understanding the neurological and psychological mechanisms is what allows you to fight against them effectively. You can't solve a problem you don't understand. And now you understand. Your brain has been hijacked. Your nervous system has been stuck in threat mode. The love you feel isn't based on reality. It's based on chemical addiction,